อันนี้คือปัจจุบันแล้ว หรืออันนี้อาจจะเป็นประวัติศาสตร์ของปัจจุบันอื่น หรืออาจจะเป็นอนาคตของดิเมนชันอื่นอย่างเงี้ยattendance online people คะ I will not be able to hear you นะคะ I would like for you to type down your nickname in the chat box so that I can check your attendance. I need your nickname. Alright? Put it down here. I'll check your attendance in a second. Okay guys, for those who are here, รัตนาพรจ้ะรัตนาพรอยู่ในนี้รัตนาพร Kim or Kim, can you write in Thai please? Is it Kim? Ratana Porn, can you write in Thai please? Kim or Kim? Kim, okay. Mariam?ธนาธรสุพิษนภา nickname please พิมพัฒน์ฟิล์มสุกฤตโจปรเมศนนท์แพรชมพูค่ะหมวยกิตติพลจอห์นนี่สิริยังไม่ทันจบเลยอะไรนะชื่อเล่นบิ๊กภูพิงค่ะภูพิงสุพิชยาภูพิงศักดา nickname GOLF อะไรเนี่ยพรอมพิริยาจ้ะคะคอปเตอร์สุพิยาค่ะสุพิษยาสุพิษยาอันนี้สุพิชาสุพิษยา not here นัชชาSHARJH เดี๋ยวนะ SHARJAพิชพรค่ะPROE under the mask I cannot hear you well จิดาภาจิดาภาใจดีพีพี่ค่ะอะไรนะพี่ดีเอลค่ะปริงวาสวัสค่ะวาสวัสปรัชญาชยาดาค่ะชยาดาหงชยาดาหงพิชยานิชกุลนิชากุลเอกภูมิทวีค่ะนิกเนมค่ะตีจิดาภาค่ะเบียร์นัทพัฒน์ NAT พอนัทโอเคลุกกหพัฒน์เป้กับข้าจิรายุ ING จิราวิทย์เกียร์นิชาการค่ะมิ้งMING มิ้งค่ะเรนนะคะนิ้งแบบนิ้งกุลสตรีว่าโอเคตินจ้ะตินสองคนนี้พิชยาช่วยหน่อยไม่ว่านะAnyone else? Hey, from now on, I'll be calling you Nick by Sanjay. สุพิชยาพิซซ่าหิวเลยไปดีโอเค Online people, Kim, pizza, I got you, Kim pizza, Supicha, Violet, Supicha. Hang on นะคะ guys. I do not like attendance, checking attendance, wasting time. But it's mandatory now that we have to do it. Okay. อ๋อจะปิดทำไม จะเลิกคลาสเฉยเลย Can you guys see the note over there? Okay, on the slide, I only cover a few of these eras, did not cover all, but I feel like I gotta mention all. So please make sure you take note carefully. There's one question, I don't remember if I told you already, but let me repeat one more time. With this question, I would like for you to briefly explain the development of geographical study. Briefly explain the development of geographical study. It is only 1 point question. 1 point question. But the things that I'm about to tell you may take at least half an hour. So take note, go back home and find out what's important. Make a quick summary of it. You do not need to go into detail, but it is my job to go into detail so that you will know where things came from. With this question, I strongly suggest for you to look at the factors that push for people to develop geographical study. Include this part into your answer. Factors that push for people to เป็นไรไหมเนี่ย
ไม่ครับ
คุณนายยังไม่พร้อมกับ for the second round. The factors that push for people to develop geographical study. Also, the tools or equipment that people use to develop geographical study. And also the highlight or the significant things that people develop in each era. What's the achievement of geographical study in each era? What kind of things that they develop or focus on? So these are the 3 things that I would like to see in your answer. Start off with hunting and gathering period. During this period, we did not have large numbers of population that live on Earth's surface. each group of people consists around 30 to 50 people maximum. All right. People live in small groups. They move around place to place to find food, to find secure place, okay, to live on. Priority in life during this time were things like security, food, and hiding from the natural disaster. These are the three main things that people concerned about their life. They want to find food, make sure that they have enough food. They want to find a secure place to live. They also want to be away from the natural disaster. These are the three things that people concerned in life. Now, back during hunting and gathering time, people did not have much knowledge of their own surrounding. No idea what caused all the natural disaster. When certain natural disaster may happen, no idea. Did not have any understanding about their own surrounding at all. Did not know what type of landscape that exists, what type of natural resources that exist, and what type of natural resources that they could use. No idea, like zero knowledge of their own surrounding. Right? People back then desired to learn more about their own physical environment in order for them to be able to cope with the natural disaster or cope with the food. They wanted to be able to find out what kind of food available to them, how much food available to them. They want to learn about physical environment so that they know if there's food in the area or not, how much food in the area. Type this out carefully, or write it down carefully. The factor that pushed for the development of geography in this time is fear. People fear of losing life from these natural disasters. So they want to learn more about the geography. And hoping that if they know more about the geography, they will understand all these natural phenomena that happen, and they can avoid being closer to these natural phenomena. Okay, they fear of these natural disasters. So they're like, okay, let me learn more about the physical environment so that I will know when and where floods going to happen, when and where earthquakes going to happen, when and where volcanic eruptions going to happen. Let me learn about it. They fear of losing life, so it pushed them to learn more about physical geography. Second thing, demand for food supply. They wanted to know where they can get food, what type of food they could eat. In order to know what type of food they could eat, the amount of food that's available, they gotta learn about the physical geography. Next one. They wanted to be safe. Like I said, this is one of the priorities for people back then. They wanted to learn what type of landscape, what type of physical environment that allow them to live life comfortably and be safe. When they first started the geographical study, they concentrate on who control these natural phenomena. That's when they first started the geographical study. They, instead of looking, listen to this, instead of looking when the natural disaster happened, or instead of looking at the characteristic of natural disaster, the people started off with who created those natural resources. They thought that if they know who created all these things, maybe we could negotiate with the person. Maybe we could ask for mercy from a person not to create these kind of natural phenomena or natural disaster. Maybe we could talk to that person. Maybe we could please the person and tell the person to stop making these kind of things to happen. So we spent years and years looking on Earth's surface, searching for a person that has that much power, someone who can create the big natural phenomena like that. Turns out that it was a waste of time. No one on Earth possessed that kind of power that could make natural phenomena like that. All right, so we thought to ourselves, well, maybe this person is not on Earth. Maybe this person is somewhere in the sky. Since this person have, that much power, a person may not be here on Earth. The person may be up in the sky. So we spent again years and years looking up the sky, hoping to find that person. Okay, we try to find where that person exists, which stars and things like that. Turns out, again, did not get anything from looking at the stars, looking at the sky. And like I said, we did not have equipment, did not have any strategies how to study the stars, did not have equipment to look at the stars. We can only look at the stars with bare eyes. Didn't get any information, didn't get anything. Until the end of hunting and gathering period, we realized that if we want to understand things that exist on Earth's surface, why don't we concentrate on the Earth's surface? Maybe there's no such person that have the power to create all these natural phenomena. Maybe all things happen naturally. Finally, we learned that maybe there's no such person, like maybe there's no God that create those kind of things. Maybe those things that happen naturally. So we finally came down on Earth's surface again. And this time, we thought that if we wanted to understand something that's complex, okay, geography or Earth's surface is complex. Maybe if we want to understand something that's complex, why don't we just start with learning something simple? And then we can add more information later, right? The first significant things that we add into the geographical study is the study of the size of the area we're living in. The size of the area we're living in. The shape of the area that we're living in. The distance from one spot to another spot within our own area. Okay, so at the end of hunting and gathering period, the geographical studies had already been established in a simple way. Okay, we look at the size, the shape, the distance from one spot to another spot. Okay, that's the achievement that the people in this period made. And once again, the tool. Like I said, people did not have the tool. They only used their own observation, their own vision to learn things. No reasonable tools at all. Right? Now, after we learn more about the physical environment, we realized that we could grow our own food. We could control the food source, right? Back then, after we learned that we could grow our own food, control the food source, we picked a place and we established our own community. All right? We established our own community and no longer move. During this period, we, like I said, that we produce our own food. The size of our community got larger and became more complex. Later on, we developed into kingdoms. From kingdoms, we developed into empire. Finally, we reached the classical period. This classical period refers to the two development, the two great empire development, Greek Empire and the Roman Empire. Brief history. Greek developed their own gods and goddesses. They developed their own political system, their own economic system. Okay. They were quite, let's say, they were quite prosperous. And at the same time, they were weak. The people were too kind, were too generous, right? Greek failed to develop their own strong army. That's why eventually the Romans captured Greek. The Romans took over most of the things that Greek developed and renamed. They renamed it. Numbers of Greek gods were renamed, and they were turned into the Roman gods and goddesses. The culture, the language, the Roman took over and then renamed, reshaped, redeveloped, okay, claimed it as their own. Now, the Roman, they extended the study of the geography to serve their own greed. They were hungry for territory expansion, political expansion, political expansion, and then they wanted to add more wealth to the empire. So they sent numbers of explorers throughout the empire and also sent the explorer outside of the empire to search for new resources, new civilizations that they can capture. Those explorers went out, searched for new environment, new physical, new environment, new resources, new people. And then they came back, report to Rome, okay, to the Caesar, what they have discovered. So more geographical information were added during this time, more detail, types of resources, the amount of resources, types of people out there. The emperor learned from these explorers, and then they use this information to decide what or where they should capture next. Okay? So geography during this time served the greed or the selfishness purposes of the Roman Empire. They just want to learn more about what exists out there, what they can capture, what they can add into their empire. The tools, mostly, they use human tools. Then the people, the explorer, to gather the information. That's the main tool. They use the explorer to find out information, ask the explorer to bring back the information. So human tool. Achievement, that's more detailed information about resources, the people. That's about it. Right? Moving on to the Dark Ages. This period happened right after Roman collapse. What I'm about to say, you do not need to write it down at all. I'm going to talk about the collapse of Rome. Now, there were numbers of issues that the empire experienced. External factors and internal factors. The internal factors were things like conflicts among the noble people in the community. Most nobles wanted to take over the power of Caesar. Okay, they fought one another, they separated into groups, tried to bribe on one another, try to attack one another. These weakened the whole empire. Also, the soldiers that's supposed to collect taxes and return the taxes to the Roman coffer, they cheated on uh, the empire. They kept most of the taxes to themselves, and these soldiers, they built their own army, also wanted to capture the power. They wanted to become the Caesar themselves, right? Natural disasters happened at the end of the Roman Empire. Diseases also occurred and killed numbers of people, right? These things that happen weaken the Roman, uh, weaken the Roman Empire, and also for the external factors. Numbers of invaders from everywhere launched their armies and attacked the empire. In the northern part of the Roman Empire, we had those Scandinavian barbarians. They call themselves as the Vikings, the Varangians, the Goths. They all came down and attacked the northern part of the empire. In the eastern part of the empire, the Roman experienced the invaders from Far East, those Asian people that they launched army, attacked the empire, and then in the southeast, in the southeastern part of the Roman Empire, they also experienced the invader from the Islamic Empire that called themselves as the Ottoman. So series of wars and attacks happened. Finally, put an end to the Roman Empire. The Dark Age, the geographical study did not develop at all. Everything completely stopped. People were living in fear. They were afraid of diseases that were spread during that time. They were afraid that if they travel too far or travel to a strange area or unfamiliar area, they may end up getting the infection. So they prefer to lay low, stick around their own village. So we did not have any more geographical information to add into the geographical study. People were afraid of the diseases. Also, right after the Roman Empire collapsed, the whole region, the whole European region was divided into small kingdoms. Small kingdoms. Each kingdom had their own monarchies, their own political system, currency, language, their own ethnicity, right? They were different from one another in many ways. So if you travel too far, you may end up in another kingdom and may get killed, right? The money can only be used within your own kingdom. If you travel to another kingdom, you won't be able to get exchange. You won't be able to get services with your own money that you have. You may have to carry other products to trade with the services. It was very difficult to travel throughout the region. You can only travel within your own kingdom. Most of the kingdoms were enemies with one another. They often fought with one another to gain one another power and territory. Religious conflicts occur constantly during the Dark Ages. Mostly Christian people and Islamic people. They launch war, attack one another, and they develop their conflicts into big wars that we call crusade. Series of crusades happen during this time. So people priority in life change. No longer worry about food. No longer worry about gaining power. This time people just worry about their own life. Wanted to make sure that they are safe. Priority in life change. They just wanted to be safe. Have no interest in studying their own surroundings. They believe that the knowledge would not help anymore. They can only help themselves by staying around the house. So nothing is being developed in this period. At the end of Dark Ages, kingdoms in the region decided to get together. The monarchs, they decided to get together, negotiate with one another, compromise with one another. They all got so tired of having to live in fear, having to fight with one another, okay? Having to hide within their own kingdom. They all got tired of this kind of lifestyle. So the monarchs got together, gained better diplomatic relationship with one another, agreed to help one another and support one another. During this time is called Renaissance period. Started around the beginning of 14th century. Renaissance means rebirth. That's a French word. Renaissance French word means rebirth. Anyway, during this time, the monarchs sponsored the scientists and the explorer. The monarchs during the Renaissance period sponsored the scientists, the explorer, and the inventors to help develop the kingdom. The scientists receive all kinds of support to do the research on what they were interested in. There were several great new findings that changed people's worldview during this time. For example, in the past, we used to think that the world is flat. So, when we believe that the world is flat, we hesitate to travel too far away from our own village. We're afraid that if we travel too far, we may drop out of the edge of the earth and disappear. So, in order to be safe, just stick around the area that we're familiar with. Okay, so the geographical information were limited to the people worldview. Like I said, we thought the world flat. Don't go far, we're gonna drop off the earth. So if we were to study the earth surface, we study the area around us, not trying to go too far. Another significant scientific study that the scientists introduced during this time is that the world is anyway, like I said, we used to think that the world is flat, but now the scientists discovered that the world is round. Okay? When we now perceive that the world is round, it means that if we keep traveling in a straight line, keep going straight, not turning anywhere, we will eventually come back to the beginning spot, to the starting point. It means that if we were to travel and explore places, all we have to do is keep going straight. Eventually, we will return home to our family. It gives people confidence. It comforts people. It allows people to know that eventually we will be able to get home to our loved one. So let's explore the world. Okay, so the world's round. Make people feel comfortable, making them feel that they will always be able to return home. The second finding that changed people's worldview is the gravity. The gravity. We used to think that certain area on Earth, if we travel to that spot, we may float into the sky and disappear. We will never know which spot that is that make us float and disappear. So we try not to go to the unfamiliar places. Okay? Now, after we learn that the gravity exists on Earth's surface, we will never float into the sky. Even if we jump, we will come back down on the surface. This, again, gives people confidence, making them feel that it's safe to travel everywhere on Earth. So, numbers of explorers travel further to the unknown area, to the virgin areas, and gather more information back to the kingdom. This is on the scientist side. Now, like I said, the monarchs, they also sponsor the inventors to produce or invent something new that make life become more comfortable. that make geographical study become more effective. One of the inventions that really help the study of geography is compass, the compass. Now, before the invention of compass, when people travel, they look at the stars, they look at the sign that other people made to find direction. When you have to depend on the stars, when it gets cloudy or during the daytime, you may not see the star that pointed you to the northern region, the northern star. You may not see the northern star during the daytime, or when it gets cloudy, you may not see that northern star. You are traveling, you have to stop, you have to wait until the sky opens again. So if you were to travel to a certain spot, it may take you longer. The speed of your traveling depends on the weather condition. If the sky is open or closed. But with the compass, you can travel at any time of the day. It saves time. And it saves you from getting lost as well. You know exactly which direction you're heading to. North, south, east, west, you know exactly. Stop you from getting lost. With the sign that you use, that's actually good. But sometimes when the sign is old, it points you to a wrong direction. You get lost, wasting time. But with the compass, people feel like, man, if I have this, I know where I'm going. It saves time, and I will be safe. Apart from compass, the inventor introduced big ships that can travel through deep ocean. And also, these great ships allow the European people to explore different continents and find out that, hey, apart from European continents, there are other continents out there. African continent, North and South American continent, Australia. We discover more that there are other civilizations exist somewhere else, and there are other types of natural resources that exist, physical environment, different physical environment that exists. We travel further, explore, this time the whole world, no longer stick to certain area. What else? The weapons. During this time, we develop variety types of weapons that we can carry while we are traveling. Now guys, back before this Song period, we had sword, we had arrows. Sometimes the sword can be very big and heavy, the arrows can be very big and heavy, but now develop a smaller size weapon that people can carry along with them easily. We also develop money system that we no longer have to exchange when we get to another region. We use the same kind of money. That's before we establish countries or nations. That's the kingdom period. We use simple coins, and we use simple coin, and we can use that coin to trade for services, trade for food in different areas. Okay, the money is stronger, and we use we stick to one currency. Easier for us to travel. What else? Explorer, further scientists thinking of other kinds of invention. Weapon, ship, compass, I think that's good enough. Factors that push for us to develop geographical study is peace and security. We want it to be in peace, we want it to be secure. So we push for geographical study to develop, and we can learn more from it. We'll learn how to be at peace, how to be insecure, how to be safe. That's Renaissance period. Moving on to the next period. colonizations and industrialization period started from 16th century up until 1870. 16th century up until 1870. During the colonization period, the Europeans aim to capture other kingdoms for the sake of I'm going to put it in a simple word. The Europeans captured different colonies just to declare their power to other kingdoms in the Europe, like for example, England, Portugal, Spain, Germany. They wanted to capture colonies just to declare that they are better than others. Like back then, whoever captured more colonies seemed to be a big guy. Other countries would give respect to that country that owned a lot of colonies. So colonizing was more, the colonizing was more like a collection, a kind of like activity that people do to create good image about themselves. Like England would capture variety types of colonies and presenting themselves as a big guy in the European region, and people give respect to England, right? Apart from seeing colonization as a sort of collection activity, they also collection mean like you collecting things. The European countries also colonize other countries just to take some of the natural resources. That's the second reason. Take some of the natural resources. In order to colonize other countries, the Europeans have to learn what kind of resources are available in those areas. So the geographical information is added. We learn about what's available in the new territory. And we learn how to deal with the people in those colonies. We learn about the new culture, new way of life, and we add that into the geographical information. So the sake of geographical study in this period is to just add more natural resources, right? To gather more natural resources, and then having more colonies just to build positive image, just to build image for themselves. Right? The tools. Already did I mention it? Colonization. The tools at this time, they still use the same tool that were developed during the Renaissance period, using the same tools. That's one thing that I forgot to talk about the Renaissance period. Please go back to the Renaissance one more time. This is the first time that geographical study is merged with scientific studies. Geography and science were merged during the Renaissance period. What I'm saying is that the geographer borrowed scientific methodologies to study the geography. We borrow scientific methodology to study the geography. This method is called empirical method. Check my spelling นะคะ Our best speller. Empirical method. We borrow this from science and we apply it to our geographical study. First time that we merge with science. By using this scientific method, it allows the geographer to have more reliable, more dependable outcome from their study. So basically what I'm saying is that after we use the scientific method, the result of our findings are more reasonable, more dependable, more reliable, more trustable than ever before. Before we apply the scientific method into our geographical study, whenever we want to find something, we use our own judgment, we use our own knowledge to come up with the summary. Sometimes we put too much attitude into the result. Okay, sometimes we use too much of our own narrow perception into the result, so the result is not accurate. But after we use empirical method to study the geographical information, it allows us to have more reasonable, more dependable results. Okay? Those results are more accurate. Modern era, we use more technological tools to study the geography. Computer systems, both hardware and software to study the geography. We develop more technological equipment like telescope, a device that detects the vibration of the Earth's surface, the tools that help us learn what type of stone, what type of sand, what type of soil, the tools that allow us to learn about the humidity in the air. You don't have to write it down. Just more technological tools that we use to study the geography. But what's important for this period is that we learn about the geography to save the physical environment. We learn the physical geography to save the environment. We wanted to know what kind of damage that we cause to the physical environment. We want to know what kind of human activities or what kind of damage that we cause to the physical environment. We want to be able to solve that. We wanted to know which area on Earth that the environment is destroyed. So in general, we study the geography to save the world from ourselves. That's how I simplify it. Study where things are damaged, how it damaged, how to solve it, how to protect it. We no longer use the study of geography to serve our own greed, our own selfishness like what we did in the past anymore. If you look at the information that you wrote down carefully, you will see that we study the geography mostly to serve our own greed. But in the modern day, we study it just to save the world from ourselves. That's it. It's only 1 point question. You don't have to write everything down. Moving on to the next slide. The next PowerPoint slide. Okay. This is a very old definition of geography. It means the study of the Earth as home of humankind. This definition is too broad, too general, and it doesn't tell us anything about the geography, right? The reason why I introduced you with this information, with this definition, because we held on to this definition for centuries. All right, we held on to it for centuries. And it made us become very biased towards things that related to human. What I'm saying is that this definition make us selfish. It makes us selfish. It makes us only want to learn things that related to humans. Anything else that has nothing to do with human, we ignore. It makes us become very biased, make us have narrow-minded, make us only interested in things that related to us. Anything that does not related to us, we ignore. We ignore the existence of it. Okay. Now you look at this definition, it says study the earth as the home of humankind. It means we study type of landscape that humans associate with it. We study the water, the types of water that humans can associate with it. But any other type of water that has nothing to do with human, we ignore it. This definition ignores one reality, which is these other species out there. What I'm saying is like, apart from humans that live on Earth, there are other species as well that live on Earth. We exclude them from the study of the geography. And that's not right. Geography is supposed to be a study of things, all things that exist on Earth's surface, not just things that relate to human. I will not ask you in exam, just to point it out that the old definitions make us biased, make us concentrate too much on ourselves, make us become selfish. When in reality, there are more things that exist on Earth. This one will not be in your exam. Just want to introduce you that other study fields develop their own techniques, their own methodologies to study what they are interested in. Geographers borrow these techniques to study the geography as well. We have scientists, geologists, economists, political scientists, right? They all develop their own technique to study what they're interested in. And geographers borrow all these techniques that these people develop to study the geography. Now, for the historians use chronological, I may not pronounce it right, chronological, to study what happened in the past. It means that the historian divide the events into time periods. Like, for example, hunting and gathering. They were the nomad. They lived from 1 AD to whatever AD or whatever BC, right? That's how we separate the time. Agricultural revolution started right after we established our own community and lasted until around 6th century, something like that. So we divided events by time and we study what happened in each period carefully. We study what happened in each era. Political scientists interested in how the society functions, how we govern and control the people. So they look into types of political system in each area, how each political system affects people's way of life, affects the development of the people in the society. That's what they are interested in. So the technique is that they categorize type of political system and look at the effect of how each political system affects people's way of life. Economists interested in money, how people make money, how people live life. They categorize people into classes and see how people in each classes contribute to the economic development. What kind of benefits that people in each class receive from the economy. Geology, they classify landscape into types: the desert, the swamp, the plain area that are suitable for agriculture, the high area, the flat area. That's how they categorize types of the Earth's crust. They all have their own techniques to study what they are interested in. What's important is this slide, 2 points, question. Guarantee you will see this question in your exam. Take note carefully with this one. This is the question that you will see, but I would like for you to include information about tool that each perspective use to study their interests. That's what I want you to include. Their concentration. Yeah. Compare and contrast between the two perspectives, and these are important information that you must cover in your answer. 2 points question. Guarantee you will see this question, so take note carefully. Try not to look at the slide. Try not to look at the slide. Try to concentrate more on the lecture. Try to concentrate more on what I'm about to say to you guys. The slide, the things on the slide can confuse you, so try not to look at that. The word spatial means the relationship of human and the land they are living in. The relationship of human and the land they are living in. Spatial perspective is interested in how people arrange things in the area. When I say arrange things in the area means how people organize the buildings, the locations of things in the area. How people organize and arrange those buildings in the area. Spatial perspective allow us to understand what people in the area value. It allows us to understand what people in the area value. Now, the way to look at what people value in the area is to make lists of all the buildings, lists of all the economic activities and human activities in the area. Make list of all the building types. What types of building that we have, we put it on a list, and count numbers of buildings. How many numbers of school, how many numbers of hospital, how many numbers of the factories, how many numbers of the plantations. We make lists of economic activities and all the buildings that exist in the area. Whatever has the highest numbers in the area show us that thing is what people value. If you take a look at Salaya as an example, we may make a list of what exists in Salaya. Turns out that there are 5 hospitals in Salaya, 2 factories in Salaya, 10 rice fields, 100 schools, universities, kindergartens in Salaya. After we look at the list, turns out that school has the highest numbers of buildings. This means that Salaya people highly value education. As simple. How we look at what people value. We look at numbers of building and types of building in the area. Whatever has the highest numbers of buildings, it means that's what people value. If we look at Sam Pran district, another district right closer to this Salaya, turns out that Sam Pran has large numbers of factories. The factory building has the highest numbers compared to other buildings. It means Sam Pran people highly value industry. Another district, let's say New Rai, another district, a few kilometers from here. We count numbers of buildings. There are not a lot of buildings. Mostly the area covered with plantation, which means that New Rai people highly value agriculture. Right? With spatial perspective, people can choose the size of the area to find out what people in those areas are interested in, the size of the area. What I'm saying is that we can choose a size of a village to find out what kind of things that people in this village value. We can choose the size of a district, find out what people in this district value, a size of a county, a size of a province, a size of a region, a size of a country, a size of the whole regional area, like Southeast Asian area, what kind of things that people value. All right. If you look at the big size of the region, let's take an example of Southeast Asian region. Most of the countries here participate in tourism activities. We offer more tourist attractions to the tourists. We establish numbers of hotels, resorts, restaurants for the tourists. Okay, it turns out that these are the highest numbers of buildings in our Southeast Asian countries. It means that Southeast Asian people highly value tourism. So once again, with spatial perspective, you can choose the size of the area you want to study. But with ecological perspective, you cannot choose the size of the area. You can only deal with country by country, or you can only deal with a size of a country. You cannot pick a district, a village, a province. You can't. You can only deal with country by country. I'll go into detail about ecological perspective later. The next important thing is that for spatial perspective, the word value means something that people prioritize, something that people respect, and something that people put it in a higher position, like they feel that they need to protect this, they feel that this is important to their life, they want to protect it, they praise it highly. But for ecological perspective, the word value means exploiting it. It also means that people get benefits from it. People get some benefit from it. People could gain wealth. People could be prospered from it. Two big meanings. Spatial perspective, something that they want to protect. Value means something that they want to protect, something that they want to hold on to, something that they want it to last for a long time. But for ecological perspective, the word value means people want to exploit it, people get benefit from it. Okay. Now, the tool for spatial perspective, map is the most important tool that we use to study the spatial perspective. The map includes locational information. It includes locational information. It simplifies things for us. It allows us to have more accurate result of what we want to find. The map gives us bird's eye view. Imagine if you want to count numbers of buildings in Saraya and find out types of buildings that exist in Saraya. And if you have to walk on the street on your own, counting, collecting the numbers of the building, learn about types of the building, you may not cover all the buildings. You may miss out some of the buildings. So eventually you may not have the accurate answer of what Saraya people value. But if you look at the map of Saraya, everything is already shown on the map. The types of buildings, where buildings are located, you have bird's eye view. You see things clearly. It saves time for you to understand what people value here. Save a lot of time. It allows you to be able to generalize what people here value. So map is a powerful tool for spatial perspective. I'll talk about the map for ecological perspective in a second. Let's deal with spatial one. The next important thing that I'd like to see in your answer. Spatial perspective explains that if the two areas have the same economic activities, if the people in two areas have the same economic activity, the characteristic of the two areas will be the same as one another. If the two areas have the same economic activities, more likely the two areas' characters or uniqueness will be the same. They will look the same. Now, to give you an example, if the two areas are practicing agriculture, so the two areas will look exactly like one another. They will have the same characters. The next important thing, for spatial perspective, it explains that there are factors that influence types of economic activities that people can choose. Factor number one, availability of resources. Availability of resources. If the area has variety types of resources, that means people have a lot of choices of what type of economic activities that they could choose. If you take a look at European region, over there, they do not have variety types of resources, all right? Because the location of it is in the northern region. Mostly the cold weather lasts longer. The soil, the temperatures are not suitable for agriculture. So if the people want to be prosperous, they can only engage with industry. They don't have a lot of resources that they can play with or they can use. If they want to survive, if they want to be able to improve their country, it's better for them to be an industrialist, deal with industry. It's better. But for people who live in the tropical countries, Southeast Asia or African countries, we have availability of resources. plenty of resources, minerals that deposit underground, and types of landscapes that are suitable for agriculture, types of landscapes that are suitable for tourism. The weathers are quite accommodate and quite moderate to the people. So we actually have choices. We could become an industrial country, or we could become agricultural country, or we could just depend on tourism. We have choices what we want to do because we have plenty of resources that support all the economic activities. The second factor, the amount of resources influence type of activities that you could choose. Let's say if you have large amount of gold that deposit underground in your area, it would be wise for you to choose to do the gold mining, right? You have plenty of gold. But if you have smaller amount of resources, like you only have a ton of gold within your own area, only 1 ton, you won't make much from it, so leave it alone. You pick something else that has more amount and you deal with it. Like let's say you have access to the ocean, so you better become fisherman, collecting the sea lice and turning into products, because there are a lot of fish out there, right? Plenty of fish. The amount of resources, like I said, is the second factor is that influence the choice of economic activity. The third factor, accessibility, the accessibility to those resources. We may have large amount of resources, variety type of resources, but if we do not have access to those things, we have lesser choices of economic activities that we can do. For example, in America, let's take an example of America. America owns large amount of resources and variety types of resources. But the American government afraid that if they do not set a control over these resources, soon people are going to exploit all these resources and the country will have nothing left to pass on to the next generation. Okay? The country will have nothing left, and maybe when the resources decline, it may affect the economy or the security of the country. So American government came up with all kinds of laws, regulations to limit people access to those resources. So what American people could do, few things, either become industrialists or become farmers. Accessibility limit what activity you could do. In Thailand, we do not have a lot of laws that control the resources. Sometimes the government even privatize the natural resources to the private company. Sometimes the private company are owned by Thai themselves, sometimes the private company are owned by the foreigners. So Thai people actually have free access to those resources. We have more choices of what economic activities that we could do. That's why if you take a look at economic activities in Thailand, we have industry, agriculture, tourism, and many others. Because we have less control, we have full access to all resources. The next factor, the last one, the culture and the people mentality limit what type of economic activities that people should choose. Culture plus people mentality. If you take a look at northeastern part of Thailand, the Isan, the northeastern region of Thailand, people highly attached to primitive and backward culture. And that influence the people over there to have lower mentality compared to people who live in the city, like in Bangkok. Many of you probably have seen the news on TV last week about Pravida, right? You know, right? Anyway, there was one old guy claiming himself as being a god, telling people that if anyone intake his urine, his poop, his mucus, the person will be able to heal from the symptom or from the sickness. A lot of people fall into this, this new cult. As you can see that, people mentality over there are quite low. If we were to turn that whole region into an industrial region, I do not think that people are ready for it yet. They're still attached to something that's very old, something very primitive, something, very superstitious. They're not ready for technology yet. They're not ready for science yet. If they were to choose economic activity, the best one for them is agriculture. But if you take a look at the people who live in the central part of Thailand, the people who live in Bangpoo, Samut Sakhon, Bangkok, and all, we have higher mentality. We also have wider world view, a higher level of education. So if we were to switch the whole area here into an industrialized area, we probably could. And the people here in the central part of Thailand are not highly attached to the old culture, right? We are more open, more exposed to variety types of culture. We are more adaptive. So I think if we were to turn into industrialized areas, we probably could. Or if we want to stick with agriculture, we probably could as well. So the last factor is the culture and people mentality that limit the choices of economic activities that they could do. To repeat one more time, spatial perspective explain that if the two areas have the same economic activity, the characters of the two areas will be the same. The factors that influence type of economic activities are the availability of resources, amount of resources, accessibility to resources, culture and people mentality. Now guys, if the spatial perspective is correct, if the spatial perspective is correct, it means that Thailand characteristic must be similar to African city characteristic, because most of African countries and Thailand are practicing mostly the same economic activity, which is agricultural activity. Thailand is still listed as agricultural country, and so as North African country. We are practicing the same economic activity. Based on what spatial perspective says, it means that Thailand will look the same as African country. But in fact, we are totally different from one another, even though we practice the same economic activity. So this is one point that ecological perspective argue about spatial perspective. Ecological perspective said, no, it is not right and it is not certain that when the two areas are practicing the same economic activity, the characteristic of the two areas will be the same. Now, another example that I like to point out is Thailand and Singapore. Now I change my mind. I'll pick something. การเปลี่ยนคำที่ก่อน let's say Eastern European countries, Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, Yugoslavia. Those countries are also listed as industrialized countries, but they still look different from America. America isn't also industrialized country, but the characteristic of the two areas are different from one another. So having the same economic activity doesn't mean that the two areas will look the same. But certainly, one thing that's certain is that the economic activities that we choose influence the uniqueness of the area. It influences the character of the area. To simplify, it means that the activity that we choose will make us have unique character. But it's not certain that when we practice the same economic activity and we are going to look the same. I will have more detail about what ecological perspective are you when we get to that point. But I like to stop for now. It's already 1:30. If you have questions that you need to discuss, go ahead and come to the front and talk to me. If you think you are okay, you're free to leave. You can leave. If you want to talk more, need more example, come to me. Bye bye online people. See you guys. See you guys.
Thank you.
See you guys next week.